Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. In today's video, I wanted to talk about two really simple things that you could do to become a better comic book investor and collector. And I kind of boiled it down to these two things, and I think if you do both of these things, you're pretty much going to have a really good experience buying and collecting comics and investing in comics. And more importantly, you're pretty much going to pay the right price for the comic that you want. Whatever comic it might be at whatever time it might be. If you follow these two things, you're going to pay the right price for a book. So the two things I kind of boiled it down to is you got to be patient and you have to be independent. So let's talk about patience first. Being patient, I think, is the most important thing you can do to get the right price for your book. Because, if you think about a typical scenario when you're buying a book, say it's like a CGC 9.8 book, whatever it might be, XYZ CGC 9.8, you figure out you want that book, you go on eBay, and maybe you see one or two that seem kind of a higher price, but there's, those are the only two on eBay. So, what I would recommend is you always want to do a completed listings search for the book that you want, the specific book that you want, to get sort of the average price. So, find out what the last 4 or 5 sold for, get the average of that price. That's going to be the fair price that you want to pay for your book, essentially. And what you'll find out a lot once you do that is you go back on eBay and those buy it nows are essentially elevated prices. They're people trying to get a lot more, maybe 20-30% more than the book is actually worth, and that happens a lot. So it pays so much to be really patient because, initially if you do want a book, it's really easy to get excited because you want that book. You go on eBay, there's only one or two, so you feel like you have to buy it, right now, and you got to pick those one or two. When what you really want to do is you want to really be patient, because these comic books, what I've sort of found out over the last 2 years of really collecting and investing in CGC 9.8 books, they're not as rare as you may think, most books, especially if it's like a popular key issue type of thing. So, at the time of when you might want a book, if you go on eBay and you see some high-priced fixed auctions, you may feel that, oh, these are the only ones that are going to be available for the next few months maybe. But in general, most issues, if you're really patient and you're on top of the search results, about 1 or 2 a month are going to come up in sort of like a fire sale auction. And even more for some books, more than a few a month, in an auction. And essentially that's what you want to do. You want to be really patient. For the most part, you don't really want to go after fixed price auctions. You want to be really patient and wait for a normal auction where they start at $1 and then they last a week and it'll sell for whatever the price is after a week. Those are the kind of auctions where you're going to get a better deal, rather than most fixed priced auctions are essentially people trying to get 20 or 30% more than the book is actually worth. For fixed price auctions, at times you got to look out, if there is a best offer option. It is worth it at times to best offer, after you do your completed listing search and your pricing research. It is sometimes worth it to best offer, maybe a little bit less than, a really good price, because at times, these people just want to get rid of their books pretty quick, so they're willing to maybe sell it for a little bit lower of a price. But as far as like buy it now prices with no best offer, a lot of times those are just people trying to get 20-30% more than the book is actually worth. So you want to avoid that. You want to be patient. These books aren't as rare as you may think. Most books anyway. Some are quite rare, but even the really rare ones, like a good example is I brought out a Batman 423. There's only about 87 of these, I believe, getting up to almost 100 of these in the CGC 9.8. So this is one that, when I initially wanted it, there were like 2 or 3 on eBay for like $600-700 American. When, if you waited for an auction, which an auction I believe 2 weeks ago went for one of these, and it went for like $356. So that's the sort of reason why you really want to be patient when you're investing in comic books. There's always going to be that book that you want coming up in an auction if you're patient for a month or two, I would say. And yeah, the Batman 423 is a really good example of those buy it now prices where people want to get those elevated prices for a book. But if you're really patient, you wait for one of those 1 week auctions. That's the best way you're going to get the best price, essentially. And it's probably even more important with CGC 9.8 buying. If you're into sort of Silver Age raw books where the condition is a little bit more subjective, that's a little bit different. You might be able to find some deals maybe on buy it nows in that, but even then, probably still best to wait for an auction as well. CGC 9.8 books, a lot of the scenario plays out like a Batman 423 though, where the buy it nows are $600 or $700. You're patient, you wait for an auction, you pay $350 to $400. Okay, so being patient, so important. Can't stress how important it is, especially when you realize you really want a book and you get really excited and really emotional and you want it right now. Just take a deep breath, be patient, and trust me, you're gonna, especially if you're buying these CGC 9.8 books for $400 or $500 a piece, you're gonna save a couple $100 every now and then by just taking a breath and being patient. So the next thing that I think you need to do to be a successful comic book collector and investor is be independent. And this really relates to, just being bombarded on a daily basis with, new Disney Plus shows, new Marvel Phase 4, new DC movies, new animated movies, and so many things coming at you on social media on a day-to-day basis. And, when you got to be independent though. You have to know yourself, and personally, I think you have to buy what you love. And you don't want to listen to Disney or Marvel to come up with an announcement and then that's what I love. You don't want to have Disney tell you what you love just based on some of these announcements. And there's kind of two reasons you don't want to do that. Number one reason is, before they made that announcement, you probably didn't really love them anyway. So now that they made that announcement, what are you going to do? Like follow Disney? Follow what they say is cool? Personally, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend to live your life like that. But the second thing is, once Disney announces it, all those books are going to be elevated in price. Like 100%. It happens now. The social media, pop culture promotion machine, once an announcement's made, everyone knows about it. They rush out on eBay and buy those issues. It's very, it's really easy to kind of predict how it happens now. So you want to be patient, you want to buy what you love, you don't want to listen to like Sony, Disney announcements and then, I really love like She-Hulk and they just announced it 4 days ago, but before 4 days ago I didn't really like She-Hulk. But so, personally I wouldn't listen to all these announcements and then go collect. You kind of listen to your heart, know what you love, know yourself, and buy the books that you actually love. Whether it's, you liked, for me personally, I really liked Batman Beyond when I was growing up as a kid watching those cartoons. Love Batman Beyond. So, I have 2 Batman Beyond #1s in the CGC 9.8. I got all the original Batman Beyonds in a raw copy. I have a really good Batman Beyond #1 in the raw copy too. So, I love Batman Beyond. If a Batman Beyond movie comes out in 5 or 10 years or whatever it might be, I'm not going to be like rushing out to buy all those Batman Beyond books at that time. If anything, I'll just be smiling and really happy at all the super high prices for all these Batman Beyond books. So that's the way you want to position yourself, and that's the way I totally recommend to position yourself. A good example of this right now is She-Hulk, which Disney and Marvel just announced that there's going to be a Disney Plus She-Hulk series. They announced that about 5 days ago, and a couple days ago on our pricing video we talked about it. And literally 2 weeks ago, the CGC 9.8 first appearance of She-Hulk was going for about $350, and then after this announcement, there were 5 or 10 that sold for $550. So $200 more just based off of that She-Hulk announcement. So I don't think that that's the best way to go about comic collecting. And the main reason why I don't think it's the best way to go about comic collecting is for pride of ownership. You don't want to sort of listen to Disney to tell you what to buy, then you go out and buy it, because then a year or two after that, as the hype settles down, Disney's not talking about whatever book it was anymore, or DC's not talking about, the hype calmed down, and you're just left with the book. So do you and like at that point, after all the hype goes, you probably don't even like the book. And then you look at the prices and you see that this book is $200 less than what you paid for it because you went out and, in a hype-filled environment and bought that book. And then at that point you get turned off to the hobby and, you say, comic book collecting sucks and this and that. And I've seen it happen before, and, it pays a lot to be independent. Just buy what you love. Don't listen to these announcements, these blogs, pop culture. Don't even listen to me. I like Batman Beyond. You don't have to like Batman Beyond. I love Todd McFarlane, Batman and Spider-Man. Early Todd McFarlane comics. If you don't like early Todd McFarlane comics, that's fine. So really, just listen to your heart. Buy what you love. You're gonna have a lot better pride of ownership that way. Otherwise, again, you're going to fall into those traps of just, buying something because it's hot, and then a year or two down the road, in those environments, you're going to overpay for those issues, and a year or two down the road, you're going to realize you overpaid for those issues. You're going to realize you probably don't even like whatever they announced. So, yeah, always just better to buy what you love, follow your heart, be independent, and, then you're going to have a really good collection that you feel great about. You have a lot of pride of ownership. And trust me, there's going to be some movies popping out of nowhere and you're going to have those issues. It's going to happen. It's bound to happen. Okay, so the two things that I recommend to become a better comic book investor are to be patient and to be independent. We talked quite in detail about both of those two. Just looking at the comic book market currently, right now, what are some of the books or areas or superheroes that I think you could buy, and then what are some of the areas that I think you could stay away from, essentially. So I think good buys right now, good kind of independent buys, I think if you like X-Men, right now is a really good time to buy X-Men. There's no really big X-Men movie out right now. Dark Phoenix kind of just bombed, so that hype has completely died down. And even better with X-Men, it's apparently coming over to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you can imagine in 4 or 5 years, there's just going to be X-Men after X-Men after X-Men movie, whatever they end up doing with X-Men. So I think right now is a good time to buy X-Men comics. I think a good time right now to buy Batman comics as well. Like a Batman 423. Maybe the Joker covers leading into this Joker movie coming in October. You'll have to watch out for those. Some Joker covers kind of popping up on eBay for elevated prices. Watch out for that. But Batman comics, I think right now, without there being a huge movie or anything, I think Batman comics are a go as well. You can dip in and buy your favorite Batman comics. A couple others, even right now, you're sort of in between the two Venom movies. So I think right now you could even pick up some Venom and Carnage and Spidey comics, whatever your favorite issues might be. And obviously in between movies now, it's probably the time to buy now because once that trailer comes out for Venom 2, all the issues will essentially be a little bit elevated, and you're not going to want to really buy in that environment, Venom and Carnage comics. So good independent buys right now, I think. X-Men comics, Batman comics, Venom, Carnage, Spidey comics, I think are pretty good buys now. So some comics that I think you shouldn't chase, you should stay away from in this current environment, and this will kind of illustrate, our two be patient, be independent points. So some comics I'd recommend now to not chase are the Eternals. Pretty much all those Eternals comics were going for 20, 30, 40% less than what they are once that announcement of the Eternals movie came out now. So you're getting really high elevated prices on the Eternals. And, personally, before this announcement came out, I don't really know anyone who really liked Eternals that much. So to have all these people coming out of the woodwork buying these Eternals comics, to me it's just, you're being a follower, is the way to put it. You're not being a leader, you're being a follower. You're listening to a $1 billion corporation like Disney and you're going, oh, that's cool, I'm going to go buy that because Disney said it, and not how I would recommend to buy comic books or to live your life, or essentially either. Jane Foster Thor comics. These are another batch of comics I would stay away from at this time for pretty much the same reasons as the Eternals. yeah, getting really hot. I know that Jane Foster Thor #1 that came out in like 2014. That was going for like 60-70 bucks a couple weeks ago, and you know these announcements came out and everything, and now it's going for like 160, 175 in the CGC 9.8. A book that's just like a couple years old. So Jane Foster comics, She-Hulk comics, and Moon Knight comics too, which came out in that Disney Plus announcement. You know, I'd probably lay off those for now. Again, I talked about She-Hulk, how the CGC 9.8 was going for $350 a couple weeks ago. Now it's going for $550 just because Marvel announced it. Now, a good way that you could kind of illustrate the differences between these two batches of comics that, you know, we just went through. Ones that I think are good independent buys where there's no hype right now, and other ones where I think there's lots of hype, and if you buy now, in 2-3 years that hype will be down and you'll probably figure out that you've overpaid 20 to 30% for each issue. Good analogy though is using the stock market and, you know, businesses that we would all know. So like, you know, X-Men, Batman, Venom, the comics I would recommend now that don't have a lot of hype, I would sort of compare those to, say, like a Home Depot or a Costco or a Visa or a Coca-Cola. These are established businesses. They're really good businesses. They make a lot of money every day, so you don't have to like worry about if they're going to make money or this and that. Really good investments over the long term. Usually with these kind of stocks, they're not going to go up a ton. They're not going to spike and go up in value and go 10 times your money over a year or anything like that. But they're going to preserve your capital and they're still making money, and if you're patient over the long term, they do really well. So I would totally compare those to kind of X-Men, Batman, Spidey comics, whereas the second batch of comics we talked about, Eternals and Thor and She-Hulk and Moon Knight right now, I would sort of compare those to stocks like Uber and Beyond Meat and what other ones do I have here? Like cannabis and crypto stocks. So all these stocks, they don't make any money. It's just sort of promises of money to be made, and you know, some of these stocks spike up a lot, and then they spike down a lot, and they spike, so they're very volatile as well. But overall, over the long term, you just almost have no idea what, you know, Uber or weed stocks or crypto stocks are going to do, because they don't make money. You know, if they made money, then you'd be able to do some sort of calculations on, you know, if they're making this amount of money, then this is what I'll pay for them. But since they're not making any money, no profits, there's sales there, but there's no profits. It's harder to do that, so it's very volatile, very hot. A lot of people are buying, you know, these kind of stocks because their neighbor might have told them to buy it or whatever it might be, whereas, you know, people that buy Home Depot and Visa and Coca-Cola, they'll just do their own research, and they know that those businesses make money all the time, and they've been growing steadily for years and years and years, and they can raise prices easily, and, you know, those are the marks of good businesses. And, you know, right now, X-Men, Batman, and Spidey comics, those brands are going to be around forever. They're iconic brands. They're going to be around for a really long time, and very similar to Home Depot, Visa, and Coca-Cola. Whereas the Eternals, you know, Jane Foster, Thor, again, I don't think there was very many Eternals fans before, you know, these movies started to come out. You know, even She-Hulk and Moon Knight, again, I would compare those to like Beyond Meat, Uber. Those are kind of stocks of the moment. They're very volatile. They go up and down a lot more than, you know, Home Depot, Visa, Coca-Cola. But, you know, again, I don't think there's as good reasons to own a Beyond Meat or Uber as there is for Home Depot, Visa. And same thing goes for, I don't think there's good reasons to own Eternals or Jane Foster comics as there is for like just really good, you know, Batman, X-Men, and Spider-Man key issues. I'd much rather recommend you go that route than, you know, listen to some hot announcements or whatever the hot comic books of the moment are and go out and buy that. Okay, I think that's about it for ranting on for, you know, these two things that I think you could do, two really easy things too that I think you could do to make yourself a better comic book investor and collector. You know, be patient and be independent. You know, if you're patient, you're not going to rush out and pay up for a comic that you don't need to, so you're going to get the right price. And if you're independent, you're not going to rush out there and buy these hot books that you didn't care about 2 weeks before the announcement, but now they announced it, you care about them all of a sudden. You're not going to do that if you're independent. You're just going to follow your heart, buy what you were nostalgic for as a kid, buy what you love, buy what catches your eye, not what somebody else tells you to buy. Yeah, so, that's being independent. If you do those two things, be patient and be independent, I think, again, you're going to have a really good experience collecting comic books, and you're not going to overpay. And those are kind of the two main things about comic book collecting. Because, yeah, if you're overpaying and you're buying all these hot issues, a year or two down the road, you're going to realize you overpaid, and then you're going to be like, I don't even like the Eternals anyways. Like, as a kid, didn't even care about the Eternals. Never even cared about Jane Foster as Thor, when I was 10 years old growing up loving comics. So, yeah, really easy to kind of get bitter if you're not independent, if you don't follow your heart and just buy what you love. Alright, that's going to be it for today's video. And if you haven't already, please join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8 here. And hit that bell, get all the latest notifications. We're doing about 4 or 5 videos a week here. And yeah, we do our pricing video on Sunday. We do videos like this where it's like kind of the fundamentals of comic book investing. And then we do videos where I will recommend issues. So, I'll pick 3 or 4 issues for whatever reason, recommend those as really good investment grade books. And we also do key read shows where I just go over some of the key issues from the past and read them and go over the story of the issues. Just because if you're like me, I don't even read a lot of these comics. I just love to get them in the CGC 9.8. I love the limited numbers and the investment aspect of it. So reading those books on those key read shows is pretty fun too. But yeah, if you do subscribe, that's so much appreciated. Thank you very, very much for all the support. I really appreciate all the support and comments from everyone. But thank you very much for watching today, and I'll see you on the next video.